Off the Hook, airing on offthehooksports.com, your home for real news, real opinions, and what really matters about Tennessee athletics. The Off the Hook podcast at offthehooksports.com or Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or wherever you go for your favorite podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn, iHeart. Like, share, follow, subscribe. Off the Hook with Dave Hooker starts now.
Quick takes on a Monday right after Josh Heupel's press conference. He's Caleb Calhoun. I am Dave Hooker. And let's talk about Josh Heupel's press conference. Very forthright, I thought, in saying that he wasn't pleased with practice last week. Now, of course, that's something that you're never going to say headed into the game, but it's rarely said even after the game, Caleb. So I guess the openness, the honesty was a little refreshing, but I find it shocking that Tennessee didn't practice well headed into a road opponent that is ranked. That to me is a head scratcher.
Oh, I totally agree. I think this is I was the guy who said Saturday when we had our little poll up on whether you're very much concerned or not at all. And I said, if those were the two options, I would have said not at all. But I kind of watched the press conference today and I'm thinking maybe very much so is where I'm leaning now. Heupel, you're right. He's very usually vague in his press conferences. He's mastered the art of what they teach you. What is it? Say a bunch of stuff without saying anything.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think it's called the Derek Jeter response.
yeah. And so, and Fulmer was sometimes a master at that too. Remember the work like heck to get better. Our team's got just constant, repetitive things. But Heupel in this one, he walked in and he was immediately not happy about the way the team played. And, we were talking a bit off the show. I kind of speculated that I think he was celebrating the win Saturday, went back and watched the film on Sunday and just got really, really angry at all the mistakes that he saw.
I bet he was angry before the plane touchdown. I bet he watched it in the plane and he was already angry because I sensed some of that in his coach's show on Sunday. I felt like there were times where Bob Kessling tried to steer it towards, hey, fantastic job, and coming back from a 10-0 deficit. And Josh Heupel was more along the lines, we got to fix a lot of things. And I believe he thinks that. And I found that very interesting. And we'll see how Tennessee practices moving forward. Anything else that stood out to you from the press conference today, Caleb?
I will give him credit that I think it was more he was angry, and it's not that he's necessarily concerned long term, because he did consistently talk about how they were able. He said at one point that last year they would not have been able to win this game against Pitt. He did say that in the press conference, and he talked about how they were relentless. He said it's good for players to get the experience of a game like this where you do everything you should to lose the game in the second half, and you still find a way to come out on top. That's not the first time. I'm the historian here, and I would bring back I think if there's ever a game in history where Tennessee did that, it was the 1997 SEC championship game against Auburn, where they finally break through and get to Atlanta after Florida had been there 4 or 5 years in a row. They're the favorites, and they did everything they could to let Auburn win that game. And it took like a historically clutch performance by Peyton Manning. Anybody who said Peyton Manning wasn't clutch needs to go back and watch that game in the SEC championship game.
No, agreed. I'm not the historian, but I will tell you that there was a very interesting halftime exchange that we can talk about sometime between he and Al Wilson. But nevertheless,
I've heard about that, but yeah.
Maybe that'll be in a book one day. So, Caleb, the press conference, he was asked about Brew McCoy, and he made reference to players doing it the right way, not specifically about Brew McCoy, but Brew McCoy is one incredible talent, and it's pretty obvious that he has shown flashes of ability, and they have him ready to play. I think Brew McCoy continues to trend upwards throughout the season.
I agree. You can kind of see why there was so much talk on wanting him to be eligible throughout the all season. And in my mind, I completely missed the boat on this. I thought, that's just fighting for their player, but they'll be fine without him because they've got Ramel Keaton and a bunch of other young guys that could play that wideout spot. No, they wanted Brew McCoy eligible for real. I mean, he was. That's 2 games now where he's made a couple of spectacular plays as the opposite wideout to Cedric Tillman, and I agree. I think he only gets better as the year goes on, and I kind of feel bad for Ramel Keaton because I actually really do like Ramel Keaton. I think, but there's just no spot for him in that right now with Brew McCoy and Cedric Tillman starting. Those two are just too good.
I'll be honest with you, Caleb. I'm not sure if it was you that said this or somebody else. We talked to so many people during football season, but somebody said, and I thought it was very wise, there's just not a top cornerback on this team. And it was Alontae Taylor, and now he's gone. Because I think you may have said that
I
Saturday.
said that, yeah.
There's not. I mean, you can get mad at Bob or Joe or whoever the case may be, but the bottom line is they're just not that yet, or not that athletically at all. And it's something that Tennessee tried to address in transfers and recruiting. But I specifically look at Andre Turrentine as a guy that I thought would have more of an impact, but I just don't see that right now. And I don't know that it's going to change anytime soon.
I agree. The player I thought would have the best chance to do it, quite honestly, would have been Christian Charles, because I think he's the only one with raw athleticism. I think the other corners are a little bit more physical, where Christian Charles is probably fast enough to hang with some of the best receivers in the SEC. But I mean, again, he's just a sophomore. So you don't really know what to make of. I mean, it sounds like Tim Banks' system requires a lot more developing and learning than I kind of thought it would at cornerback. And so I'm with you. I just don't think they have a number one cornerback right now. They might have to address that on the trail. But yeah, it's if my to be fair to them, I think we can't underestimate this. They had like 5 guys in the secondary miss spring practice because of injury.
Great point. Great point. I mean, how do you build chemistry? I mean, other than the offensive line, chemistry is most important in the secondary, would be my argument. How do you build chemistry if you don't practice together?
Yeah, exactly. And those 15 spring practices are really, if your advantage, and this was supposed to be Tennessee's advantage this year, is chemistry and experience, because they still don't necessarily have the best athletes to compete consistently week to week. Let's just be honest. I mean, it was a mess that Heupel inherited last year. You're not going to lose 25 players to the transfer portal from a 3-7 team, and then in your second year be able to compete regularly with Alabama and Georgia in terms of raw talent. Tennessee's advantage was experience and chemistry, and one of the most significant units on the team, the secondary, couldn't develop any of that. And I think spring practice is so much about developing chemistry if you have experience already on the team.
So Gerald Mincey played all the snaps, according to a question asked of Heupel in the press conference at left tackle. I've seen a lot of these battles. I'm an old man, Caleb. I've seen a lot of these battles, and it was obvious what was going to happen. Jeremiah Crawford, great job. We appreciate you being you. But in the long run, Gerald Mincey has more ability, and when he gets it, he's going to be the guy. And I don't think that's going to change unless he changes his approach or gets injured. I just don't see Crawford, even though Heupel said he'll have opportunities. I don't see a lot of them out there for him.
I agree. I think Jeremiah Crawford is very similar to on the other side, Dane Davis. You respect Dane Davis. He was a walk-on, fought his way into getting playing time. He's in the rotation. He'll be out there for some snaps, but that job is Darnell Wright's at right tackle. I mean, there's no questions about it. And I think that Dane Davis and Jeremiah Crawford they can be solid rotational offensive linemen, because usually they haven't done that so much this year, but last year they went 10, 11 deep sometimes in their rotation, which is where Crawford could see a lot of snaps. But I'm with you. Gerald Mincey is definitely the star. And honestly, we talked about me learning, more fleshing out learning the word moxie over the weekend. Gerald Mincey's got it. I mean, here's a guy he's the most entertaining offensive lineman I think I've ever seen on a team.
Yep. He is Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Quick Takes, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.